Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Arab Center, Washington, D.C. This is Khalil Jahshan, Executive Director of the Center, and I'm delighted today to host Jonathan Kuttab in this new episode of Expert Interview. For Middle East audiences and people focused on the study of the Middle East, particularly the Arab-Israeli conflict and the situation in Palestine, Jonathan does not need an introduction, but for the sake of others who might be joining us for this, let me say that Jonathan is a co-founder of the Palestinian human rights group Al-Haq, well known for its human rights work in the occupied West Bank. He's also a co-founder of Nonviolence International. He's a well-known international human rights attorney, and he does practice law here in the United States, in Palestine, and in Israel. Jonathan serves and has served on the board of directors of many outfits, both in Palestine and here in Washington or in the United States, including the board of directors of Bethlehem Bible College, and is president of the board of Holy Land Trust. He is co-founder and board member of the Just Peace Advocates, and he was the head of the legal committee negotiating the Cairo Agreement back in 1994 between Israel and the PLO. Jonathan has authored many articles over the years pertaining to human rights, civil rights, both in the States and in Palestine. He's the author of two main books on the situation in Palestine, including The Truth Shall Set You Free, and also Beyond the Two-State Solution. Jonathan also serves as a non-resident fellow here at Arab Center, so I'm delighted to have this informal conversation with him as a colleague here at Arab Center. Jonathan has just come back from an extended visit to the occupied West Bank, to Palestine in general, and we thought we will chat with him for a few minutes about his observations regarding his trip. Jonathan, welcome back. And how long did you spend this time? I know you frequently visit the area.
Thank you very much. It's a little over a month, I think.
Excellent. That's plenty to come back with, loaded with information about recent developments. Let me start with the most obvious question in a way. With the war in Gaza in its, 18th month right now, 560 days almost, and more than 60,000 people between dead and disappeared or unrecovered bodies. People, rightly so, have focused their attention on the situation in Gaza. But people tend to overlook the fact that the West Bank is kind of like the second front of this war and has been somewhat dragged into this war from the very beginning. Could you brief us on this particular aspect of the war, and to what extent is the West Bank right in the middle of the ongoing war in Palestine?
Well, thank you very much, Khalil. The West Bank is certainly very much part of what is happening, not only because it is very near and the people are one people actually in Gaza and in the West Bank, but also because the State of Israel and the settlers have taken what is happening in Gaza and in a real way both threatened and started to implement the same policies in Gaza and in the West Bank that they have in Gaza. For example, the settlers in the West Bank from day one found this as an opportunity to really run amok. I mean, settlers have always enjoyed the kind of impunity and have always harassed and attacked Palestinians. But since the war had started, they have really taken specific measures now that Smotrich is in charge of the West Bank. And they openly say, we are going to do to you what we did in Gaza. And as a result, there is now, and I certainly sensed it, a very palpable sense of actual fear that people have in Gaza, in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, but also many of the Israeli Arabs, Palestinians or citizens of the state of Israel, are also reporting the same phenomena: a feeling of foreboding, a feeling of fear, a feeling of we had better lie low because we don't want to give them an excuse to start literally carrying out a genocide in the West Bank and including massive deportations.
Let's put things in perspective. I know you mentioned settlers and you mentioned the population of the West Bank and Gaza and their aspirations and their sentiments with regards to the ongoing war. But what are we talking about in terms of numbers? So that I think the uninitiated, at least among our audience,
Well,
can get a figure for that. The population right now of the West Bank is what? A little over 3 million, correct?
a little over 3 million,
And
yes.
how many illegal Jewish settlers are there in the West Bank?
If you include Jerusalem, it's about 800,000. If you
Wow.
don't include Jerusalem, it's about 550,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank.
And again, to put it in perspective, for those who are not familiar with the population numbers in Palestine, that number, 800,000, is the same number of Palestinians in the largest city or district in the West Bank, which is the district of Hebron. So there are more settlers than the largest, if you will, district in occupied Palestine, the West
Well,
Bank.
it is not just the numbers, it's the numbers, the location of these settlements, and the infrastructure of roads that connect them to each other and connects them to the state of Israel so that they feel as one unit with Israel. They feel there's only one state, really. Settlers do not think in terms of two states. They think this is all Israel with pockets of Arabs living here. Some of them have more rights who are citizens. Yeah, some of them have more freedom of movement, like people in Jerusalem. But all of them are Arabs. All of them are enemies. All of them are subject to our anger, our retaliation, and our fears as a group that needs to be brought under pressure and under control.
Now, these settlers, unlike, let's say, the experience in the 1948 areas, do not necessarily live in mixed cities, let's say, Palestinians and Jewish settlers together. They tend to be on their own, living in Jewish settlements.
Oh, no, they're very specifically Jewish. These are not Israeli settlements.
Yeah.
I mean, Israeli Arabs, including Druze Arabs who have served in the army, are not allowed to come and live in those settlements. They are
And
purely
we're
Jewish.
talking about what? At least 150 of those settlements between West Bank and Jerusalem, plus many others, more than that, and illegal outposts, correct?
Well, it's hard because the pattern of settlements developed over the years, and it developed with first a group of totally unruly settlers. They set up some caravans or they take over some property, and then they need infrastructure. They need water, they need a defensive perimeter, they need roads, they need electricity, and they start expanding. And many times they are illegal even under Israeli law, but they all get legitimized and legalized at a later point. So they feel that whether they are legal or illegal is irrelevant. It's just a question of time because they feel they are the true Zionists. They are the ones who are carrying out the proper job of redeeming the land and liberating the land from foreigners.
In terms of the fighting taking place right now in the West Bank particularly. It seems to me that there is a pattern focusing on the northern part of the West Bank. Could you explain that? What's going
Okay,
on? Why?
before I do, I should mention that there's very little fighting taking place at all.
Mhm.
There is very little resistance, especially these days. There's even very little stone throwing taking place because people feel very much that any action of resistance gives an excuse for harsher measures and for, frankly, for expulsion from the whole land. There was a report in the Israeli paper that so-called terror incidents are down 80%. There's almost no real activity of resistance other than at the points where the settlers themselves are provoking by attacking villages, by throwing people out of their houses. Sometimes there's a little stone throwing resistance to that. But in terms of armed resistance or organized actions, if anything, this is the quietest that the West Bank has been in many, many years.
Yeah, what I was referring to when I used the term fighting, I was referring to basically one-sided fighting in the sense that
Yes.
the Israeli armed forces, the Israeli army, seems to be focusing on the northern part of the West Bank, particularly the areas of Jenin, Tul Karm, even all the way down, focusing on refugee camps all the way down to Nablus. Why the focus on this area? What's the aim of
Here's at least what we think is the plan. First is the plan of of establishing the pattern, and the pattern is we move into a town or an area, we destroy the infrastructure, the roads, the water, the sewage, the electricity. We force people out and we prevent them from coming back in. About 40,000 people were forced out of Jenin and Tulkarem. And then the pattern also concentrates on refugee camps. So the pattern is we force people out of their homes. We don't claim that they are building illegally. We don't claim anything. We just tell them leave. And where they go is their problem, not our problem. And while they are starting with refugees, they openly talk about doing it to the whole population, especially people like Ben Gvir and Smutrich and others. They openly talk about the need to get rid of Palestinians physically. And also the threat of deportation is being used. See what we are doing in Jenin. We're going to do it next in Nablus. We're going to do it next in Bethlehem. Already the army is moving in and out of Palestinian towns and cities unopposed. Nobody shoots at them. Nobody throws stones. And they go in and they put X's on homes that they plan to destroy. And mostly in refugee camps, but also in whole neighborhoods. Also, they're establishing the pattern that whenever we want to, we move into an area, we order everybody to leave, and anybody who doesn't leave, we can shoot, we can destroy, we can arrest, etc. So there is a pattern by the army, but there's also another pattern by settlers themselves. Settlers are now using a different method, which I think they've started using several months ago, which is like the shepherding settlements, which is one person sometimes, or a few persons setting up a caravan and bringing in a herd of sheep or cattle, and then going around and spreading out their sheep, kicking Palestinians out of their lands, attacking their flocks, and expanding the reach of the settlements. And this is taking place not only in Area C, but also on the edges of Area B. They enter Area B to expand the area under their control. See, in their mind, any place where we can establish our authority becomes ours. We don't allow Palestinians to move there. We push them out, and we leave it to the government to later come up with the proper legal explanation or justification or legitimization of what we are already doing.
Jonathan, let me probe you on this issue a little bit deeper. You know, you've been involved in the legalities of the so-called peace process from the very beginning. And you mentioned areas A, B, and C a minute ago. Does this classification of areas under Palestinian, under Israeli, under joint, does that system mean anything today, or has it become just obsolete?
It does mean something, but it is not very clear what it means. Basically, it has to do, initially, it had to do with dividing authority between the Palestinian National Authority, the PA, and the Israeli Civil Administration. And the idea was that Area A, which is very heavily populated, will be continuously expanding so that it becomes B, so that it moves into Area B and C, and eventually build into a state. That model has disappeared. There has been no more shifting of land from C to B and from B to A since Netanyahu came into power. Instead, it has become a division of responsibilities more than a decision of authority. Israel continues to exercise authority wherever it chooses, but it turns over responsibility to the Palestinian Authority to the extent that it wishes to do so. And this has become a problem because Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have not bought into this model and often speak about the Palestinian Authority as an enemy, speaks about them as a hostile force that needs to be trimmed and humiliated and brought into more control rather than a partner, even a junior partner in administering the territories. So in their mind, the Palestinian Authority is not the beginning of a Palestinian statehood or a partner. Instead, they are a subcontractor who is not doing their job very well, so we can always move in and take portions of their authority or their land or whatever they're doing if they don't serve us as fully as we want them to.
Israel has always had Smotriches and Ben-Gvirs from the beginning of the occupation back in 1967. To avoid any misunderstanding on the part of anybody watching us with this conversation or listening to this conversation, the policies that you just described that is pushed by Smotrich and Ben-Gvir as a lobby, if you will, within the Netanyahu government, that is not just limited to them. I mean, essentially, a lot of their attitude toward, let's say, the future of the territories, let's call a spade, the annexation of the West Bank is a matter of policy right now in Israel. I mean, there is a majority of Israelis who do support that, even though we have to acknowledge that there is a segment of Israeli society that is not comfortable with that.
Yes, that is true. Not only are these people, they never bought into the Oslo model at all. Mm-hmm. They didn't even want the wall to be built because they think of the whole area as being under their authority, as being Israel. And when you ask them about demography, they'll tell you a miracle will happen and we will somehow lose these people. And now they think this is the time of miracles. With Trump in power, with an international community that is totally absent from the scene, we can in fact now implement what we always wanted to implement. However, there remains in Israel a substantial group whose vision of Zionism requires an Arab partner to administer things on their behalf. Smotrich doesn't believe that. Smotrich believes we don't need an Arab partner.
He has no use even for that role, by the way.
Exactly. And this is the difference. And you see this every day. You see this in the settlers taking more physical authority of going around and shooting and arresting people. But you also see that when it comes to the Palestinian Authority itself, in places like Ramallah, where it continues to be somewhat strong, but also in Hebron and some of the other areas where there is almost a tension between Israelis, between those who have no use for the PA and those who can't believe how wonderful it is that they are the PA doing their job on their behalf.
Jonathan, as a human rights and civil rights attorney, let me ask you this question. I mean, historically, you've been a keen observer and participant with regards to observing and studying this conflict. In a protracted conflict, we get numb somehow. We see more than 150 Palestinians in the West Bank getting killed every year, sometimes more, sometimes less. Frankly, since the beginning of this war, just over the past 17 months, we've seen it's a matter of life and death. It's not a joke. We're seeing about 900 people killed at least in the West Bank. By the way, the statistical equivalent of that is about 60,000 Americans. Imagine 60,000 Americans being killed in a short period of time. 17 months. How is that impacting Palestinian society?
The important thing to note here is the sense of impunity, the sense that we can do anything now. We are allowed. We have the green light from the United States. Even though the previous administration allowed them to do whatever they wanted, yet there was always a hesitancy. Please try to reduce civilian casualties. Please think twice about moving into Rafah. Please allow some humanitarian assistance there and try and reduce civilian losses. Now they have a new administration that doesn't ask them any of these questions. That says, do whatever you want. You have the green light, and we will protect you from the United Nations. We will protect you from the ICC and the ICJ. In fact, we will punish the judges and the prosecutors and the ICC and the ICJ and anybody who collects evidence on your behalf. So there's a great sense of empowerment and impunity, that we can do whatever we want. We don't need to justify it anymore. We don't need to say that we are defending ourselves. We don't need to say that somehow this is necessary to make sure it doesn't happen again. No, we can give full vent to our own anger, our own frustration, our own desire for revenge, our own potential fears. We can attack Syria not because we want to make sure in the future they won't have the power to act independently without referring back to us. This tremendous sense of empowerment and impunity is paradoxically mixed with a sense of also fear that this may not last forever, that this is an opportunity we have to take advantage of, that the administration may change, the world may change, we may no longer be allowed in the future to do what we are now allowed to do. So there is a sense of urgency. Let's do anything we can do now while we are being allowed to do it.
Jonathan, let me conclude with the following question regarding U.S. policy and U.S. role, which you just referred to as contributing to the empowerment of the most extreme of the extremes in Israel, and particularly among the settlers. The talk among analysts here in Washington is, of course, focused particularly over the last 2.5 months since the last presidential election. It seems to focus on the issue of expelling the population of Gaza. Some people, I hear whispers as I mingle with colleagues in different think tanks, friendly or unfriendly alike, to the Palestinians. They seem to be talking about the possibility of that also happening in the West Bank, and that the U.S. or this particular administration might ignore that, might not do something about it if it were to happen. The previous administration, for example, objected to any demographic pressure of this sort or measures of this sort. Are we talking about the possibility of an annexation of the West Bank? Is that happening? Do the people fear that?
Yes, annexation is very much on the mind of Israelis, and the administration has made it clear that they're not really bothered by annexation talk. The problem is that annexation is always linked to the idea of a two-state solution and eliminating a two-state solution by annexing territories. Yeah, for most people now, that's not the issue at all. The only objection to annexation these days, other than some people in the PA and others in the international community, in Israel itself, the only problem with annexation is demography. We don't want to add more Arabs into Israel, because why should we annex them? We are in charge. We can do whatever we want. There is nothing that annexation will give us that we don't have now. So there are people who are saying, why annex them? It's just stupid. It doesn't give us anything. And then there are people, ideologues like Smotrich, who say, who are we fooling? It is all ours. Let's just be upfront about it. Why don't we just annex it? It doesn't make any difference. We'll keep them, but we'll give them no power. We will not give them citizenship. We will not give them rights to vote, but we'll annex them. Why not? And the idea that this becomes the clear definition of apartheid is irrelevant to them. So what? Call it what you want. This is the reality now. So in Israel now, the real discussion is not between those who want annexation and those who don't, those who are thinking of two-state solution and those who are not. The real discussion is one over tactics. What gets us what we want better? Is it better to continue to play this game and pretend, or to just do away with it and do what we really want to do all along? This is the Smotrich versus the middle of the road, or the more rational Zionists, I think.
Thank you, Jonathan, very much. Appreciate your generosity in terms of spending this time with us to help us understand the detail of these rather sad and worrisome situation that continues to unfold in the occupied West Bank of Palestine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and watching this program. I hope that you found Jonathan's remarks intriguing and stimulating. Please stay in touch. Thank you.